Hello, my people. Welcome to Godfrey Story Time. And if today is your first time watching my video, this is a revenge story channel. So don't forget to hit on the like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories. Kindly let's listen to this amazing story that I'm having for you today. Kindly let's listen.
My son did not know I was still on the line. I heard him tell his wife that I was too much work and that it was time to put me somewhere far away. I stayed very still and did not say a word. But in my heart something changed that day. Something that would never go back to the way it was. I sold the house for $875,000 cash. Every single penny went into my name. My son flew home from his beach vacation ready to take over my life. But when he put his key in the lock, nothing happened. He found my letter on the welcome mat. And when he read every word, he fell to his knees right there on the porch and cried like a lost little child. But that is not where our story starts. Before we get into all of it, please tap the like button right now and tell us down in the comments what country you are watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Now let us go back to where everything began. It was a Tuesday morning in October when my phone rang. I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking my tea, looking out at the big oak tree in the yard. That tree was here before I was born. My late husband Raymond planted a small flower bed under it when we first moved in, and I still water those flowers every single week without fail. The caller ID showed my son Daniel's name, and I smiled before I even answered. "Hello, sweetheart. How are you doing?" His voice sounded happy, the way it does when he wants something. "Mom, how are you? I've been thinking about you so much." He said those words and I felt warm all over. Because even after everything, I am still his mother. I still love him the way only a mother can. I told him I was just fine. I told him I made my tea and was going to read my book after. I did not tell him that my knee had been hurting for 2 weeks, or that I had been waking up at 3 in the morning thinking about Raymond and crying into my pillow until sunrise. I kept those things to myself. A mother learns which parts of herself to hide so that her children do not worry. "Are you eating well, Mom? Are you taking your medicine?" "Yes," I told him. "All of it every day." Good, he said. Then his voice got a little quieter. "Mom, Priya and I are thinking about taking a little vacation next week. Just a few days. We might go down to the coast." "That sounds lovely," I told him. "You two deserve it. You both work so hard." We talked a little more. He asked about the garden and about my neighbor Francis and about the church ladies group I go to on Thursdays. It was a good conversation. The kind that makes you feel close to someone even when they are far away. "I love you, Mom," he said before hanging up. "I love you more," I told him. And I meant it with everything in me. I heard the familiar little click of the call ending. But then I realized I could still hear something. Voices, very faint but clear enough. His phone had not disconnected all the way. I sat very still and pressed my phone tighter to my ear. Priya's voice came first. "So, did you talk to her?" Daniel's voice had changed completely. It was flat and cold like a door closing. "It sounds fine. Happy even. Which makes this harder." Priya sighed. "Daniel, we cannot keep going like this. That house is worth almost $1 million. It is just sitting there with one old woman rattling around inside it." My chest tightened like someone had wrapped a rope around it. One old woman. That is what I was to my daughter-in-law. A thing rattling around in a house they wanted. "She is not going to last forever," Priya said. "And every month we wait for money we are not getting." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know. I already looked into some places. There is a care home about 40 minutes from here. It is decent. Not fancy but clean." "She will not like it," said Priya. "She will fight us on it. She always does. She is stubborn." Daniel gave a short, dry laugh. "She is 72 years old and she lives alone. She almost left the bath running last month. She cannot manage by herself much longer. We can frame it like we are doing her a favor. Like we are worried about her safety. Make her feel like it is her idea." My hand was shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. Make her feel like it is her idea. Those words hit me somewhere deep. Somewhere a mother should never be hit by her own child's words. "She trusts me completely," Daniel continued. I just have to be careful about how I bring it up. Give it a few weeks. After the vacation, we will start planting the idea then. I set my phone down on the kitchen table very slowly. I sat there looking at Raymond's picture on the wall. He was smiling in that photo the way he always smiled. Big and easy, like the world was a good place and he was glad to be in it. I whispered to him, "Did you hear that, Raymond?" He could not answer me. He has been gone for 4 years now. But I swear in that quiet kitchen I felt him listening. The oak tree outside swayed a little in the wind, even though the morning had been completely still just moments before. I took a long, slow breath. Then I got up, washed my teacup, dried it and put it back in the cupboard. And I started to think. I am not a woman who falls apart easily. Raymond used to say I was made of something stronger than most people. When he got sick, I was the one who drove him to every appointment. I was the one who stayed up reading about his treatment options while he slept. I was the one who held him at the end and told him it was okay to go, even though it was the hardest thing I have ever done. I have raised a son, buried a husband, and kept a house running for 41 years. I was not going to let two people who had barely lived their lives decide what happened to mine. I walked to the little desk in the corner of the living room, the one Raymond used to pay our bills on every first of the month. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a thick brown folder. Inside that folder was everything. The mortgage papers from 1987. The deed to the house. Fully paid off in 2009. Raymond's life insurance documents. The property tax records are going back 30 years. I spread them out on the table and I looked at them for a long time. This house was mine. Just mine. Raymond and I had signed the deed together. But when he passed, it transferred to me completely. Daniel's name was not on a single piece of paper. Not one. He had grown up here, yes. He had opened Christmas presents in the living room and learned to ride his bike in the driveway and cried in his old bedroom when his first girlfriend broke his heart. But none of that made it his. It was mine. And I could do whatever I wanted with it. The idea came to me slowly, the way good ideas usually do. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like a puzzle you start working on without knowing what the picture will be. I did not want to punish my son. That was never what this was about. I wanted him to understand something. I wanted him to feel what it was like to have the ground taken out from under you. To have someone decide your future without asking you. To show up somewhere expecting one thing and find something else entirely. I made myself another cup of tea. I sat down with Raymond's old notepad and I began to write. Not a letter. Not yet. Just a list of things I needed to do. Plan. And for the first time in a long time I felt something close to peace. The next morning I called Frances. She is my neighbor and my oldest friend. We have known each other since our boys were in diapers together. Frances has a laugh that starts somewhere in her belly and shakes the whole room. When I told her what I had heard, she went very quiet. Then she said, "Dorothy, you tell me exactly what you need and I will help you." That is the kind of friend Frances is. I told her I needed a real estate agent who could move quickly and be discreet. She knew one. A woman named Carol who had sold 3 houses on our street in the last year alone. Frances called her that same afternoon. Carol came over to the house the next day with a notepad and a calm, professional manner that I liked immediately. Carol walked through every room with her notepad in hand. She looked at the kitchen and the bathrooms and the backyard and the big front porch. She tapped things and measured things and looked out windows at different angles. When she was finished, she sat across from me at the kitchen table where I had drunk 10,000 cups of tea and helped my son with his homework and cried over Raymond's empty chair. "Mrs. Whitfield," she said, "this is a beautiful home. It is well maintained, it is in a very desirable neighborhood, and the market right now is exceptionally strong. I can list this at 850,000. I think we will have offers within the week." I folded my hands in my lap and told her to go ahead. While the listing was being prepared, I had things to take care of. I called my doctor and made sure all my medical records were organized. I called my accountant and told him what I was planning. I called my attorney, a quiet man named Mr. Adeyemi who had handled Raymond's estate, and I asked him to help me review the paperwork. He did not ask me many questions. He just made sure everything was done correctly and that my interests were protected completely. I also started looking for an apartment. Something small and manageable and close to Francis. Something that was just mine, with no history and no memories of things that used to be good and had turned into something painful. I found a place in a building about 12 minutes from Francis. It was on the 3rd floor with a window that faced east so you could see the sunrise if you woke up early enough. The kitchen was small but it had good light. The bedroom was quiet. There was a little balcony with just enough room for 2 chairs and a potted plant. I stood in the empty apartment and turned around slowly. I imagined my morning tea on that balcony. I imagined reading my books in that good light. I imagined waking up there every day knowing that everything around me was mine and mine alone. Chosen by me, for me, with no one having any claim on it whatsoever. I paid the deposit that same afternoon. Carol called me 5 days after listing the house. "We have 3 offers," she said. "All above asking price. The highest is $875,000. All cash, no contingencies. They want to close in 21 days. I sat down in Raymond's old chair and took a breath. 21 days. Yes, I told her. Accept it. The buyers were a young couple with a baby. They had been looking for a year and had lost 3 other houses to other buyers. Carol told me the wife cried when she found out their offer was accepted. I thought about that for a moment. A young woman crying happy tears in the house where I had cried so many other kinds. I spent the next week packing. Francis came over every day and helped me. We went through 40 years of a life together, room by room, drawer by drawer. Some things I kept. Raymond's watch. His old gardening gloves. The photo albums. The blue blanket from our first apartment. Some things I gave to charity. The extra furniture. The kitchen gadgets I had never used. The guest room curtains. And some things I simply let go of without ceremony, dropping them in bags and carrying them to the curb without looking back. The house got a little emptier every day. Felt less like loss and more like relief. There was one afternoon when I sat on the floor of Daniel's old bedroom with a box of things from his childhood. A little league trophy from 3rd grade. A drawing he made of our family when he was 5 years old. Raymond and I and him, all stick figures with big round heads and enormous smiles. In that drawing we were happy. We were everything a family should be. I held that drawing for a long time. I thought about the little boy who made it. I thought about how much I had loved that little boy. How much I still loved the man he had become, even after everything. I put the drawing in my box of things to keep. Some things you hold on to not because they are perfect but because they are true. I hired a moving company for the bigger items. They came on a Thursday and worked quickly and carefully. By noon the main rooms were empty. The movers carried out the sofa Raymond and I had picked from a shop on the edge of town on a rainy Saturday. They carried out the dining table where we had eaten 30 years of dinners. They carried out the bookshelf I had filled and refilled so many times I could not count. The house echoed as they worked. Empty rooms sound different. Larger and lonelier and more honest somehow. Before I left for the last time, I walked through every room alone. The bedroom. The kitchen. The little sitting room Raymond and I used to watch television in after dinner. The backyard with the oak tree and the flower bed. I stood under the oak tree for a few minutes. The October air was cool and smelled like dried leaves and would smoke from somewhere down the street. Raymond had loved October. He said it was the most honest month of the year. Nothing hiding, nothing pretending. Just things showing their true colors before letting go. I pulled on my garden gloves one last time and did a little tidying of the flower bed. Pulled a few weeds. Pressed the soil down gently around the last of the autumn flowers. Then I took off the gloves, folded them neatly, and left them on the back step for the new family. Small gift. A little piece of the life that had been lived here. I locked the front door with my new key. Then I changed the locks. I had arranged for a locksmith to come that very afternoon, after the movers left and before I handed over the house. New locks, new keys. Everything going to the new owners and their lawyer according to the sale agreement. Daniel still had a copy of the old house key on his keychain. I knew this. He had carried it for years, that old brass key with a worn edge. He thought it was a key to his future, He had no idea it was now a key to nothing at all. I drove to my new apartment in the afternoon sunlight and I did not look back. I had not called Daniel since that Tuesday in October. He had called me twice. I had answered both times and been perfectly cheerful. Yes, sweetheart. No, sweetheart. Everything is fine. I am reading a good book. Francis came for tea yesterday. The church ladies group was lovely on Thursday. He had no idea. When? He asked once if I had thought about what we discussed, and I told him cheerfully that I had been thinking about a lot of things lately. He laughed too. And when I hung up the phone, I sat in my new apartment in my new chair by my east-facing window and I allowed myself to feel something I had not felt in a long time. Something close to satisfaction. Francis brought over a plant from my balcony. A little potted rosemary that smelled clean and sharp. We sat out there together in our coats with our tea and watched the sky turn pink over the rooftops. "You're doing the right thing," she told me. "I know," I said. She squeezed my hand. Raymond would be proud. I looked at the sky for a long time after she said that. Hope she was right. Think she was. Raymond was always very clear about one thing. He said a person is only as good as how they treat the people who cannot fight back. Daniel had forgotten that lesson. I was going to remind him. The closing happened on a Wednesday. I sat in Mr. Adeyemi's office and signed my name 17 times on various documents. Each signature felt like something final. Not sad exactly, just final. The way finishing a long book feels when you close the last page. Mr. Adeyemi slid the cashier's check across the desk to me when it was done. $875,000. I looked at it for a moment. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my purse. I thanked everyone in the room and walked out into the afternoon. I went straight to the bank and deposited every penny into an account that had only my name on it. That evening I sat down to write the letter. I had been thinking about what to say for weeks. I did not want it to be angry. Anger is easy. Anyone can be angry. I wanted it to be clear. The kind of clear that cannot be argued with or explained away. The kind of clear that stays with a person. I wrote several drafts on Raymond's old notepad. Too long, too short, too cold, too soft. Finally I found the right words. Not too many, not too few. Just the truth, plainly stated, with nothing hidden and nothing extra. I copied it out neatly on a clean piece of white paper in my best handwriting. The handwriting I learned from a teacher named Mrs. Paulson in the 4th grade, who said that a person's handwriting tells you everything about their character. I sealed the letter in a white envelope and wrote Daniel and Priya's names on the front in the same careful hand. Then I drove to my old house. Had one last task. I had bought a small security camera from the hardware store. The kind that runs on batteries and connects to your phone through an application. Francis's grandson had helped me set it up on a Saturday afternoon, showing me patiently how the application worked, how to check the live feed, how the motion alerts would come to my phone whenever someone approached. He was 18 years old and very kind. He called me Auntie Dorothy and told me I was more tech-savvy than his own grandmother, which made me laugh. I positioned the camera carefully inside the front porch, tucked high in the corner behind the old light fixture where it could see the door perfectly but would be very difficult to notice unless you were looking for it. I tested it 3 times from my car at the end of the street, watching the live feed on my phone. Clear as anything. Then I taped the letter to the inside of the front door at eye level, where it was absolutely impossible to miss. I stood on the porch of my old house one last time. The neighbors 2 doors down had their porch light on. A cat I did not recognize sat on the sidewalk watching me. The oak tree in the backyard was invisible from the front, but I knew it was there. "Goodbye," I said softly. Not to Daniel. Not to Priya. To the house. To Raymond. To the 38 years of a life we had built inside those walls. I got in my car and I drove to my apartment and I made myself a bowl of soup and I watched something pleasant on television and I went to bed and I slept better than I had slept in months. Daniel and Priya were due home from their vacation on a Friday. They had gone to a beach resort on the coast, the kind of place that costs more money than I used to make in 2 months of working. Priya had posted pictures on her social account, which Francis's granddaughter had shown me. Photographs of cocktails and sunsets and the 2 of them laughing on a white sand beach. I looked at those photographs carefully. My son looked relaxed, happy, and like a man without a care in the world. Like a man who had everything figured out. I put the phone down and went to water my rosemary plant on the balcony. I wondered if he ever thought about me when he was standing in all that sunshine. I wondered if he looked at those blue waves and thought about his mother sitting alone at her kitchen table. I decided probably not. And that was all right. I did not need him to think about me. Not anymore. I had done enough waiting to be remembered. From here on I was going to make sure I was remembered. Friday came in gray and drizzly. The kind of autumn day that makes everything feel heavier than it really is. I sat in my new apartment with my phone on the table beside my tea. The camera application was open on the screen. The live feed showed my old front porch, quiet and still in the morning light. I had the volume turned up so I could hear any sounds that came through the microphone. I had done everything I could do. Now I just had to wait. Frances called at 10 in the morning to check on me. "Are you nervous?" she asked. No, I told her. And I meant it. I was calm in a way that surprised even me. I had made the right choice. I had taken care of myself the way no one else was going to. Whatever happened next, I was ready. At 1:45 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I set down my tea very carefully and picked up my phone. On the screen, I could see a car pulling into the driveway of my old house. A shiny gray car that I recognized as Priya's. I watched the screen closely. The car sat there for a moment. Then both doors opened. Priya got out first, stretching her arms above her head the way people do after a long drive. She was wearing a yellow blouse and she looked rested and cheerful. Daniel got out next, pulling a suitcase from the back. He was wearing the blue jacket I had given him for his birthday 3 years ago. I noticed that detail. The blue jacket from me. They walked toward the front door together. Priya was talking and Daniel was nodding, and they both looked the way people look when they are coming home to something they believe belongs to them. Priya reached into her bag for her keys. He tried the lock. Nothing happened. She frowned and tried again. I could see her face on the screen, the small knot forming between her eyebrows. She pulled the key out and looked at it and tried once more. Daniel stepped forward and put his hand out for the key. He tried to. Nothing. He stepped back and looked at the door for a moment. Then he said something I could not quite make out, but I could read the shape of it from his expression. Something had changed. His face was shifting from tired and easy to tense and searching. He went around the side of the house. I watched the front porch. Priya stood with her arms crossed, still trying to make sense of the key. A minute passed. 2 minutes. Daniel came back around looking darker. He shook his head. Every lock was changed. Priya's hand went to her mouth. She pulled out her phone and dialed. I watched her wait. She dialed again. I had disconnected my old home number 4 days earlier. She looked at Daniel and said something. He shook his head again. Then Priya tried the door one more time, pushing on it with her shoulder the way people do when they cannot accept that something is truly locked. Did not move. Daniel walked up to the door and stood very close to it, looking at the lock carefully the way he looks at things when he is working out a problem. He reached out and touched the handle. Then he stepped back. His hands went to his hips, which is what he does when something has gone wrong that he cannot fix with charm or a phone call. He looked at Priya. Priya looked at him. Something was passing between them. The beginning of understanding. Not the full picture yet, but the first edge of it. Then Priya pointed at something. She had seen the corner of the white envelope through the small window beside the door. She pointed and Daniel leaned to look. There it was. A letter. My handwriting. New names. They tried the windows one by one. The kitchen window on the side of the house was unlocked. I had left it that way on purpose. Priya climbed through first, inelegant and frightened, her yellow blouse catching on the frame. Daniel helped her from outside and then climbed through himself. A minute later, the front door opened from inside and they both stood in the entryway of my empty house, and I watched them see it for the first time. The rooms were bare. The furniture was gone. The walls had small square shadows where pictures used to hang. Their voices came through the microphone, small and strange in the empty space. They turned in slow circles looking at the nothing where everything used to be. Then Priya saw the envelope. It was right there at eye level on the inside of the door. She reached out and took it down with both hands. Her name and Daniel's, in my careful handwriting. She held it for a moment before opening it. Daniel moved close behind her to read over her shoulder. I sat in my apartment chair with my phone in both hands, and I watched my son and daughter-in-law read every word I had written. I watched their faces change. First confusion. Then a kind of slow horror, like a person watching something terrible happen in slow motion and understanding they cannot stop it. Priya's hand went to her mouth again. Daniel took the letter from her and read it himself from the beginning. My letter said this. Dear Daniel and Priya, by the time you read this, you will have noticed that the locks have been changed. You will also have noticed that the house is empty. That is because I have sold it. The closing was last Wednesday. The new owners move in on Monday morning. Every piece of furniture and every personal item has been moved to my new apartment, which I am very happy in. The sale price was $875,000, all of which is in my account and will be used for my retirement and my care as I age, on my own terms, in a place I have chosen for myself. I want you to know that I heard your conversation in October. The whole thing. I know about the care home 40 minutes from your house. I know about your vacation and your plans. I know what you think of me. The letter continued. I am writing this not to punish you, Daniel, though I understand if it feels that way. I am writing this because I raised you to be a good man and somewhere along the way that got lost. Your father would be heartbroken. I am not heartbroken. I am clear. I spent 41 years in this house loving your father and raising you and taking care of everything without complaint. I went to work when we needed money and stayed home when you needed me and never once asked you to put yourself aside for my sake. The least I expected in return was honesty. What I got instead was a plan made behind my back by a son who told me he loved me in the same breath he was using to plan my removal. I want you to know that I do not hate you. I am your mother. That is not something that changes. But I am also a person. A full person with a life and a mind and the right to decide what happens to me. Exercise that right. The house is sold. The money is mine. And I am well. I hope that one day you will understand why I did this. I hope that one day you will be the man I always believed you could be. Until then, I wish you both well. With love, your mother, Dorothy. That was the letter. 31 lines on one piece of white paper. The most honest thing I had written in years. On the screen, I watched Priya fold her arms tight around herself and turn away from Daniel. He stood in the empty entryway, still holding the letter. He read it a third time, slowly, with his head down. Then he looked up at the empty room around him. At the shadows on the walls where the pictures had been. At the bare floor where the old hall table had stood. He walked into the living room and I watched him stand in the middle of it and turn in a slow circle. He was seeing it properly for the first time. Not the house he thought he was inheriting. Just a room. Just 4 walls and a floor and a ceiling and the faintest smell of the life that used to be in it. Priya came to stand in the doorway of the living room. She said something. Daniel shook his head. She said something else. Her voice was getting louder. The microphone on the camera was picking up fragments now, bits and pieces breaking through clearly. What did she mean she heard us? Priya's voice high and tight. She could not have. Daniel's voice low and strained. She did. She heard everything. Priya paced a few steps. All that money. She said it out loud, not to Daniel, almost to herself. $875,000. That was supposed to be. She stopped. She did not finish the sentence. But I knew how it ended. That was supposed to be ours. Daniel sat down on the floor. I watched my son lower himself to the bare wood floor of the empty living room and sit there with his knees up and his head back against the wall. He looked very young from the camera. The way he used to look when he was a child and something had gone wrong that he did not know how to fix. Priya stood across the room from him. They were not talking now. Just 2 people in an empty house beginning to understand the full weight of what had happened. Not just what they had lost but how they had lost it. Not to bad luck or bad timing, but to the woman they had dismissed. The woman they thought they had figured out. I turned off the camera feed. I had seen enough. I set my phone face down on the table and sat for a moment with my hands in my lap. The apartment was quiet. Outside my east-facing window the afternoon had gone gray and damp. I got up and went to the kitchen and started making soup. Real soup from scratch the way Raymond taught me. Not a recipe from a book. Just things you put together by feel, adding a little of this and a little of that until it smells right. Onions first, then carrots, then a handful of dried thyme from the little jar on the shelf. The smell filled my small kitchen and spread through the apartment, and for a few minutes everything was very simple and very good. Frances came by at 5 with a bottle of something sparkling. She was dressed nicely and her eyes were bright. "Well," she said, standing in my doorway. I told her everything. We sat at my small kitchen table and I walked her through the whole afternoon while the soup simmered on the stove. When I got to the part where Daniel sat down on the floor, Frances put her hand over mine on the table. "Dorothy," she said softly. She did not say anything after that. She did not need to. We sat there together in my warm kitchen while the daylight faded outside and the soup smelled like something good was happening. That is what a real friend does. They sit with you in the important moments and they do not try to make it into something other than what it is. Later that evening, after Frances had gone home, I sat in my chair by the window with a cup of tea and Raymond's old watch in my hand. I do not wear it. It is too big for my wrist. But I hold it sometimes in the evenings when I want to feel close to him. The gold case was warm from my hand. The second hand moved steadily around the face the way it always had, without hesitation, without asking permission. Raymond had worn that watch every day for 30 years. He wore it the day we signed the deed for the house. He wore it the day Daniel was born. He wore it every ordinary day in between, through all the thousands of mornings and evenings that made up a life. I thought about what Raymond would say if he could see all of this. I think he would not say very much. He was not a big talker. He believed in doing things more than talking about them. He would probably just nod slowly the way he did when something made sense to him. And then he might say, "Dorothy, you handled it." 3 words. That would be enough. "You handled it." I closed my fingers around the watch. "Yes, Raymond. Think I did." I set the watch on the side table beside my tea. Outside, the city was doing its nighttime things. Cars going past. Sirens somewhere far away. The ordinary sounds of a world that keeps moving no matter what happens inside of it. In the days that followed, I did not hear from Daniel directly. Not at first. He tried the old home number twice, which of course went to nothing. Then he must have called the church, because my friend Adiz from the ladies' group called me to ask very gently if everything was all right with my son and if there was anything she should know. I told her everything was perfectly fine and that Daniel was just going through a difficult time. She said she would pray for our family. I thanked her and meant it. I think prayer is rarely the wrong idea. Whatever form it takes, the act of wishing goodness toward people is almost never wasted. It was 10 days after the letter before Daniel called my mobile phone. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello, sweetheart." His voice was very quiet. He stopped. Started again. "I heard you got a new apartment." "Yes," I told him. "I did. It is lovely." His voice cracked on the next word. "Mom, I am." He stopped again. I did not fill the silence. I had spent enough of my life filling silences for other people. This one was his to fill. After a long moment he said, "I did not know you could hear us." I told him I knew. He was quiet. Then, "I am so sorry, Mom." I said it back to him, not mechanically but truly. I believe he meant it. I believe sorry has to start somewhere. I did not invite him over that day. I was not ready for that yet. But we talked for 20 minutes. He told me that he and Priya had moved in temporarily with her parents. I told him I hoped that was working out. He asked if he could come see me and I said maybe in a few weeks. He said okay. There was something different in his voice. Something that had not been there before. Less of the easy confidence. More of something rawer and realer. It is strange what loss can do to a person. Sometimes it strips away the things that were never actually solid to begin with and leaves something more honest underneath. I hoped that was what was happening with my son. I truly hoped it. The weeks that followed were good ones. I got myself into a routine in the new apartment. Tea at the window in the mornings. Reading in the afternoons. Thursdays with the church ladies. Fridays when Francis came for dinner and we cooked together and talked for hours the way old friends can do. I signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. Something I had always wanted to try and never made time for when the house was taking up all my energy. The teacher was a young man named Patrick who was patient and funny and told me I had a natural sense of color. I did not know if that was true, but it was nice to hear. I painted small things at first. The rosemary plant on my balcony. The view of the rooftops from my east window. A memory of the oak tree in my old backyard. Its wide branches and the flower bed underneath. I am not a skilled painter. My lines wander and my proportions are often wrong. But there is something about making a thing with your hands that is deeply satisfying in a way that is hard to explain. You start with a blank space and you make something exist in it that did not exist before. Raymond would have liked seeing me paint. He would have stood behind my chair and put his hands on my shoulders and said something warm and slightly teasing, and I would have swatted his arm and told him to go away. Daniel came to see me for the first time on a Sunday about 3 weeks after our phone call. He came alone. He stood in my doorway with a small bunch of flowers that I could see he had bought from a petrol station because the paper around them still had the price sticker. I pretended not to notice. I took the flowers and thanked him and put them in a glass of water on my kitchen table. "Come in," I said. He came in and looked around my apartment slowly. It was the first time he had seen it. He looked at my chair by the window and the rosemary on the balcony and my paintings drying on the small easel in the corner. He sat at my kitchen table and I made us tea. We did not talk about the house for a while. We talked about other things. He told me his company had offered him a transfer. A project in another city. He was thinking about it. I asked him what Priya thought. He looked at his tea. "We are working through some things," he said. I told him I was sorry to hear that and I meant it genuinely, not as a point scored. Whatever happened between Daniel and his wife was between them. My quarrel was never with their marriage. It was with the two of them treating me like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. After a while he said, "Mom, I need to ask you something." I told him to go ahead. He looked up from his tea. "Were you really all right? Living alone in that house?" I thought about the question seriously before answering. I told him the truth. "Most days yes, some days no. It can be lonely," I told him. "After your father died, certain hours of the day are harder than others. The evenings especially." He nodded slowly. "Why did you not tell me?" I looked at him over my teacup. "'Cause you did not ask," I said. "Not with real curiosity. You asked the way people ask when they want to hear that everything is fine so they can stop worrying. I wanted to be fine, so I told you I was." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I thought we were helping you." I told him gently that I understood that. I told him that people who do wrong things rarely think they are doing wrong things. They tell themselves a story about it that makes them the good person in it. The care home was clean. You would have been safe. You would have been looked after. Those are the things he would have told himself. What he would not have said out loud, even inside his own head, was, "We wanted the money and she was in the way." Some truths are too uncomfortable to look at directly, so you build a story around them that has softer edges. He did not argue with me. That was something. The old Daniel would have argued. He would have used logic and reason to build a case for why he was right and why I was misreading the situation. This Daniel just sat with it. Sat with the discomfort of being seen clearly by someone who knew him better than anyone. I topped up both our cups of tea. I told him I was not interested in relitigating everything. I told him I had done what I needed to do and I was well and I wanted to go forward. He asked what going forward meant for us. I told him it meant starting from honesty. Just honesty. No more performing. No more managing me. Just truth. He said he could do that. I told him I hoped so. We sat together until the afternoon light shifted and the apartment got warm and golden. He looked at my painting of the oak tree and asked about it. I told him I had started taking watercolor classes. He looked at it for a long time. That is the old house, he said. Yes, I told him. The backyard. He was quiet. Then he said, I loved that tree. I know, I told him. You climbed it every day one summer when you were 8. You scraped your palms so many times on the bark that your father bought you gloves. He laughed. A real laugh, sudden and surprised. Dad and his solutions, he said. Yes, I agreed. Dad and his solutions. We did not fix everything that afternoon. You cannot fix in one afternoon what has been broken over years. But we started. And starting is the most important part. He hugged me when he left. A real hug, the kind where a person actually holds on. I could feel him breathing. I stood in my doorway and watched him walk to his car, and I thought about all the years of watching him walk away from me. First to school and then to college and then to his own life. And how each time I had let him go willingly, because that is what love is. You grow something and then you open your hand. In the months that followed, things settled into a new shape. Not the same shape as before. A different one. Daniel called more often and talked more honestly. He took the transfer at work and moved to the other city, which he said was a fresh start he needed. Priya and he were still finding their way. I did not ask too many questions about that. Some things need privacy to heal. Focused on my own life. My watercolor classes. My Thursdays with the church ladies. My Friday dinners with Francis. My morning tea at the east-facing window, watching the sky change colors as the sun came up. I started a little garden on my balcony. Just containers, nothing like the big yard I used to have. Herbs mostly. Rosemary and thyme, and a small tomato plant that Francis said would never produce anything, but that gave me 3 small tomatoes in late summer, which I ate with a little salt, standing right there on the balcony like they were the finest thing I had ever tasted. Maybe they were. They were mine. Everything on that balcony was mine. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to protect. Just a woman and her small garden and her quiet life that she had built herself on her own terms, exactly the way she wanted it. I think often about what a home really is. I used to think it was the house. The walls and the floors and the windows and the yard. The oak tree and the flower bed. The kitchen table where we paid bills and ate dinner and helped with homework and cried together when things were hard. But a home is not made of those things. Those things can be sold or emptied or changed beyond recognition. A home is something you carry with you. It is the way you make your tea in the morning, and the things you keep close on your bedside table, and the sound of a friend's voice on the other end of the phone, and the habit of looking east when you wake up to see what kind of day the sky is offering. I made a new home in 48 hours. Because I already had everything I needed to make one. I had always had it. I just needed the space to see it. Space I had to clear for myself because no one was going to clear it for me. I want to say something to anyone who is listening to this who might recognize themselves in my story. Not as me, but as Daniel. As the person who got caught up in plans and money and convenience and forgot that there was a real human being at the center of it all. It is not too late. It is almost never too late. But you have to start with honesty. You have to look at what you actually did and call it what it actually was. Not what you meant. Not what you would have done if things had been different. What you actually did. Love is not only a feeling. It is a practice. Something you do with your hands and your time and your attention every single day. If you stop practicing, you can start again. But you have to be willing to feel the full weight of having stopped. My son is learning that. It is slow going. Some days he does better than others. I am patient. I have all the time in the world now. My own time in my own apartment with my own life. That is not nothing. That is everything. Francis asked me once, not long after all of this, whether I felt sad. I thought about it carefully before answering. There is something in me that will always be sad about what happened. Not sad about what I did. About what made it necessary. About the years spent wondering why my son called less often and visited less carefully. About the Tuesday in October when I heard my own child plan my disposal in the same voice he used to read me his school reports. That is a sadness that does not fully leave. I do not think it should. Some things should leave a mark. Not so they ruin you, but so you remember what matters. But underneath the sadness there is something else. Something firm and quiet. Self-respect maybe. Or just the simple fact of knowing that when the moment came, I did not collapse. I thought clearly and I acted wisely and I took care of myself the way I had spent my whole life taking care of other people. There is a deep satisfaction in that. The kind that sits solidly in the chest and does not require anyone else to see it or confirm it. I know what I did. I know why I did it. I know that it was right. That is enough. That has always been enough. Raymond comes to me in my dreams sometimes. Not often. Maybe once a month. He is always the way he was at 50, which was his best age. Strong and easy and full of that particular warmth that made everyone around him feel like they mattered. In the dreams we are usually just doing ordinary things. Cooking dinner. Sitting on the porch. Driving somewhere without knowing exactly where we are going. He never says anything important in the dreams. He never gives me advice or explains things or resolves anything. He is just there. Just Raymond. And when I wake up, I lie still for a few minutes holding on to the feeling before it fades. I told the watercolor class about Raymond one Thursday afternoon. Not the whole story. Just a small piece of it. Patrick had asked us to paint something we missed. I was painting the old kitchen, the big window over the sink that let in the morning light, and he came to stand beside me and asked about it. I told him it was my old house. I told him my husband and I had lived there for a long time. Patrick looked at the painting for a moment. He said, "You can feel the love in it." And I thought, yes, I can. Because that is the thing about love. It stays in objects and spaces and small habits, and the smell of certain things cooking. Cannot be sold. Cannot be changed with a locksmith. Just stays. I am 72 years old. I am in good health. My knee still bothers me sometimes, but I manage it well. I read 2 books a month. I go to the community center twice a week. I have good friends and a good apartment and a balcony garden and a son I am slowly learning to be in a real relationship with rather than a performed one. I have $875,000 in an account with my name on it, which I intend to use wisely and generously over whatever years remain to me. I do not think about the care home 40 minutes from Daniel's house. I have never seen it and I never will. What I will do is this. I will keep making my tea in the mornings and watching the sunrise from my east-facing window. I will keep painting imperfect watercolors of the things and places I love. I will keep watering my balcony herbs and eating my own tomatoes with salt. I will keep sitting at the table with Francis on Friday evenings and laughing the way only people who have known each other for 50 years can laugh, from some place that does not require explanation. I will keep holding Raymond's watch on some evenings. I will keep saying goodnight to his photograph on my bedside table, the one where he is smiling that big easy smile like the world is a good place and he is glad to be in it. And I will keep answering when my son calls. I will keep listening when he talks. I will keep telling him the truth even when it is uncomfortable, because that is what a real relationship requires. And I will keep loving him because that is what a mother does. Not because she owes it. Not because she is required to. But because love, real love, the kind that has been tested and has survived, is one of the few things in this life that is worth holding on to even when everything else is uncertain. Even when you are 72 years old and starting over in a 3rd-floor apartment with a rosemary plant and a view of the sunrise. If you have an elderly parent in your life, I want to ask you something. When did you last call them just to talk, not to check a box or ease a guilt? When did you last visit without an agenda? When did you last sit with them in the ordinary way that says, "You matter to me not because of what you have but because of who you are"? Costs nothing. Takes an afternoon. And it is the kind of thing you will not regret when the afternoons run out. Do not be Daniel before the letter. Be the person who never needs a letter written to them in the first place. That is what I want to leave you with today. Not anger. Not bitterness. Not a story about revenge, though I understand why it might look like one from the outside. This is a story about a woman who refused to let other people write the last chapter of her life. Who decided that her voice and her choices and her dignity were worth protecting even when the person threatening them was someone she loved. Every person deserves that. Every single one. No matter how old they are or how alone they feel or how easy it would be for other people to make decisions for them. You always have more options than you think. You always have more strength than you know. Dorothy Whitfield did not go quietly. And she is very glad she did not. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like right now and subscribe to Godfred Storytime so you never miss a new story. We put out new stories every week for people who love real human tales told from the heart. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of Dorothy's story moved you most. We read every single comment and we love hearing from you wherever in the world you are watching from. To hear the next story, click on the box on the right side of your screen. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people you love.